We will now call the meeting of the Administration Projects Committee to order at 8:30. Please give your attention to this short video.
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
All right, thank you. Emily, please conduct the roll call.
Commissioner Arnridge.
Here.
Commissioner G.
Here.
Vice Chair Xavier.
Here.
Chair Noack.
Here.
And we do have a quorum with Commissioner Burnell absent.
Okay. First item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public are invited to address the committee regarding any item that's not listed on the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Do I have any?
We do not have any in-person or virtual public comments, but we did receive a written public comment from Brian Swanson. It was provided to the committee ahead of time.
Great. Thank you. That concludes public comment item. We're now moving to the consent calendar items. Are there any changes or comments from the committee? Does anybody want to pull an item?
Just a quick question on one item.
Okay.
And this is for staff. It's on the 680, the $4 million change for HDA on environmental work. What I wasn't really clear is that's within the planned budget. What we expected, because this is the next phase.
Yeah, that's my item, and it's under regular, and there will be presentation. So yes, but to your question, it is within the project budget.
I'm reading too far ahead. Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank
no.
you.
I'm looking at.
But that is the question. Thank you.
All right. So I expect no questions when that item comes up from you? Okay. Anybody else on the actual consent items? Is there any public comment?
We have not received any virtual or in-person public comment.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Arnridge.
Aye.
Commissioner G.
Aye.
Vice Chair Xavier.
Aye.
Chair Noack.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Burnell absent.
We're now moving to the regular agenda items. First item will be introduced by Lindy. Provide update on legislation, both the state and federal levels.
Good morning, Chair Noack, Commissioners. I'm happy to introduce Mr. Watts, who is here to provide a state legislative update. We will also be going over a handful of bills, some of which we are looking for approval to provide an oppose or support letter of, many of which we are just looking to monitor but wanted to bring to your attention. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm happy to be here. I'll just make this one comment. Driving from Auburn to here is a dream now, compared to the COVID years when I had to come down here and spend 3 hours on the freeway. So you'll be seeing me much more frequently than I did in the last 2 months. Back in February, I did report on the state budget, and that time I reported that the governor proposed almost $230 billion general fund, but having a surplus of only $363 million. Since then, just two things to note that are causing some consternation in terms of trying to put together the final budget later this spring. And that is the LA fires. LA representatives have been circulating in the Capitol asking for $2 billion So you can see that's a little bit of a pressure there. And on top of that, the governor is seeking a loan of over $3.5 billion to meet some Medi-Cal expenses that were under projected, dealing with the expansion of the Medi-Cal program. So within that scope of the budget, I just want to give you a little bit of an update. The good news still is that the transportation budget came in very strongly. We've had a couple of hearings by the subcommittee so far. No danger signs, no red flags have been flown yet, but I'm keeping a close eye out. I mean, the budget's where I broke into the legislature a long time ago, so it's one of my favorite things to follow. So that's where we are on the state budget. On top of just where we are statically, two groups of legislators, one group from the north led by Senator Wiener and one from the south, both submitted requests for $2 billion to be added for transit. And that's going to be put into the whole overall budget mix in the coming weeks. So I'm not sure where that's going to go. I think the 2 billion ask would be withdrawn if they're successful, particularly in the north, of getting SB 63 with some significant ability to have revenues and have that approved by the governor. So we'll be touching on that in a bit. Cap and trade, just as a reminder, the cap and trade program is due to expire. The authority to conduct the auctions will expire in 2030. Why that's a key date is up until this last cycle for some of the major transit programs, such as the Transit Intercity Rail program, which depends on some of that funding, as well as a high-speed rail program. If the cap and trade program were allowed to expire or not be extended, the ability to have a TIRCP program will not go away. It just wouldn't be as robust, and CalSTA and the Secretary's office would not be able to award multi-year awards, which they've been able to do because of the influx of the cap and trade revenues, the emission revenues. So we expect to see something. We had thought there, with the formation of a cap and trade caucus, that may emerge this year, but given the other budget pressures, I think we're going to see cap and trade extended next year. I may be wrong, but that's my prognostication. Would be it'll be something they take care of in the second year of the session. That'll also give time for a lot of the new folks, who have come. A third of the legislature is brand new, to deal with all these budget pressures and deal with cap and trade extension. So we'll be watching that closely. And so far, they've not done anything publicly with respect to the little cap and trade caucus. One issue that's coming to the forefront is the diminishment in fuel tax revenues. I think I may have alluded to this in the past, but in the last couple of weeks, we've been able to pin down. The Legislative Analyst's Office shows a decline of nearly $10 billion in fuel tax revenues by 2030. And as a consequence, the question in Sacramento is, well, how do we deal with that? Are we going to come back with some other form of taxation to fund the road and transit programs that the state does now? Or, how we can't just stand by and let it go as it continues to erode over time, especially as some of our older structures come to the foreground for delivery in rehab projects. So it's a dilemma. The chair of the Transportation Committee, Assemblymember Lori Wilson, has taken this under her wing as something she wants to work on this session and maybe into the next. She did introduce legislation that deals with the Technical Advisory Committee on the Road User Charge Program at the CTC, more as a placeholder and to start the conversation. She's already had or conducted one hearing on the scope of the problem, and I expect to see more hearings in the coming weeks, informational hearings. that look into what are some of the alternatives, including the road user charge and others. So that's going to be coming to the foreground, probably another issue to be resolved or addressed or more closely looked at in 2026. Turning to the bills, we did touch on this briefly with a matrix that we had developed with the guidance of Lindy. And there are recommendations from myself and staff contained in these. I can go through this quickly if that's what you'd prefer. There are several autonomous vehicle bills. I didn't lump them together. I'm just going to go numerically through the assembly and highlight them. So AB 33 is a version that the previous author has, to which the previous author is making some changes that deal with commercial vehicles and autonomous vehicles. Basically, she's now taking on the delivery of commercial goods to residents or businesses by autonomous vehicles without a human operator, mandating that they be there. We continue to recommend and oppose because it's, it's setting the industry back and it doesn't allow for innovation and exploration of how to improve the system. And that bill has been set for hearing on the 21st of April. AB 259 is a local agency teleconference restoration or continuation. And that's set in local government in April, and we're recommending a support position on that. Whether you utilize it or not, having the authority is probably something that should be extended if it's available from the legislature. AB 891 is a very interesting bill. It calls on Caltrans to conduct up to 6 projects within a pilot program to build what they call quick build projects. So these would be projects funded through the State Highway Operations and Operations Program, the SHOP program. And it would be funded there. They would be on conventional roadways, and these would be quick and dirty capital projects to implement bike lanes or other alternative transportation programs. 6 projects on the state system, funded by the state on the local state system. We're recommending monitor at that because we're not sure where the state is at this point in time. Mr. Schultz's bill, AB 939, is a bond act of $20 billion mainly for transit. It's in Transportation Committee, not set for hearing yet. And I will just make this little aside. Thursday mornings are the day that the notices for hearings in the next 2 weeks come up. So I sat in the car this morning and updated this from what you see on your matrix in the packet right now. So this $20 billion bond act has not been set yet. I'll be surprised if it gets set. The idea of a bond act, well, some other mechanisms are in play. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense because you have to put that off on the ballot in a later year. A very interesting bill by Mr. Ward, AB 1070, would require members of transportation agency boards or transit boards to use the system. And in addition, requires non-voting members from among transit users and affiliated labor organizations. We have that down. It's in local government. It's not been set. The CTA and several of the big transit agencies are mobilizing to try to make this make a little bit more sense for them instead of having non-electeds on the board in such large numbers. We have a monitor on that bill. AB 1421 is Chair Wilson's bill on the TAC, the RUC TAC extension. That's a monitor and it's not been set yet. Mr. Wiener's bill, Senator Wiener's bill, SB 63, is going through a lot of changes. It was amended in late March. And at this point, we were recommending work with author. Work with author rather than support, oppose, or some other thing. His other bill, SB 71, which extends CEQA exemptions for transit and ATP projects. That's already on the books. This extends it indefinitely and makes some other modifying changes that are not significant. We're recommending support to you. I've got three more to go through real quickly. SB 480 is an autonomous vehicle bill, but this deals with requiring marker lights on a vehicle when the AV system is being used. So you can see the particularly privately owned vehicles will have to have these marker lights on them. That's a monitor, and it's moved out of Senate Trans this week. It'll be in approps in the coming weeks. Mr. Grayson's autonomous vehicle bill, SB 511, is still looking like a spot bill. Hasn't been amended yet. I'm sorry, it was amended on March 26th. And we have a monitor recommendation on that because we're not sure how far that he's going to make any more changes as staff and others are working with him. And finally, SB 572 by Senator Gonzalez is another autonomous vehicle bill. Requires a consumer notice when there is a partial driving automation feature built into a vehicle, like my very unpopular Tesla that I drive around Auburn. We have a monitor bill on that. And so that would be my concluding comment. And ready for questions? I believe that's how it works. Now, he may be working, well, it's passed with that in the bill out of transportation. So I believe that's really the intent.
I'll just add, we have heard the private sector is not very excited about this bill. But we're currently keeping it as a monitor as we're waiting to kind of see whether further language is going to be developed and kind of what the coalition starts to build around it. There's also, I believe, a question about whether this will apply to just, current market or those that have already, like what happens to vehicles already on the road?
Okay,
That's a good point.
no?
Thanks, Mark. I was just gonna make comments on two specific bills, and I agree with everything. AB 939, that's a $20 billion bond proposal, very loose, go one way or the other. It's sort of, from my seat, it was kind of a fishing expedition. League of California Cities, Damon Conklin, their lobbyist, was supporting that. Friday, we met for 2 hours with 50 different cities. 100% came out against it. And the reason why is it's really, if you look at all the cities, transportation agencies, next year or the following year, either 26 or 28, every single entity has some sort of a tax measure on that. And because there is no definition where the money go, who would be, whether it really is state money or local money, it seemed to be, well, it was a unanimous decision not to back this at this time, which was surprising because I think even Damon thought cities would be, but it's competing against what we're doing. As you know, we're trying to come out in 2028. And the backstory is too, is both the Assembly and the Senate leadership has met, and they have told all their members, do not support any revenue increase for cities. Really clear message. And I was in Sacramento all day yesterday, busiest day I've ever seen there. Every one of even our local legislators said, well, we're not supporting anything. And finally asked them why, and they told us straight out. They feel that cities are the problem that made government too expensive and people can't afford to live there. I said, really? You're the one that has all the debt in it. But so on that one, and then the second one, Tim and I met with Tim Grayson on his autonomous bill, and he's actually allowed us the opportunity to rewrite it to accomplish what it is, or he'll withdraw. It was really done for a different reason, and he wasn't fully aware why that was being proposed by the lobbyists that approached them that they trusted. So our executive director is kind of take a lead with some of our partners to take an attempt to narrow it to what its purpose is, that it will not affect this broad basis. So that was good news that Senator Grayson is helping us.
On that specific bill, we've been coordinating with his staff, and it sounds like he's gonna withdraw the bill. So that's the direction at least the staff has indicated to us at this point. So we'll kind of, we'll continue to watch the bill, but they're planning on withdrawing that bill.
Madam
And-
Chair, can I make
yeah.
one last comment on the Bond Act?
Mm-hmm.
It's an ironic proposal because the problem facing transit right now is operational funding. And bonds would be nice to have to expand, but we have a very robust program at the state level and amongst all the self-help counties for capital programs related to transit. So, you know, it just seemed like an odd thing to propose at this point in time. So I'll leave it at that and
Yeah.
stop talking.
That was,
Thanks.
I should have mentioned, the other
capital.
part of, yeah, they said, look, most of us, and particularly LA Metro, we think we have a fiscal cliff. Oh my God. They have collectively, with 26 million population living there, they have some, and they agreed for the same reason, Mark. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, because that's not the same opposition to SB 63, because 63 is operational money. And I think MTC voted last week to support with amendments. That was voted MTC on SB 63. Spending plenty of time on that one. Yeah, so that's a time suck. Okay, any other questions on these? I guess we look for a motion now to support the positions that
Yeah,
are
I
being
would recommend
suggested.
that we take the positions that are as recommended as presented.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair, public comments?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Emily. Public comments?
We have no public comments.
Okay.
Commissioner Arnrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Brunel,
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Aye.
Vice Chair Xavier,
Aye.
Chair Noack.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
I guess I ought to abstain on SB 63 since I voted to support with amendments on SB 63 at MTC. So
Working with the law.
working with the author is close enough, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll leave it as. Yeah. I just don't want to conflict at any point on my votes. Okay. Okay, thank you, Lindy and Mark. It's going to be a busy year for you. And now we're on to Brooke. Do you want to introduce Brooke or?
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Watts. Thank you, Chair Noack. I'm happy to introduce Ms. Kins, who is here from Ty Ginsburg and Associates to provide us with a federal update. Go ahead, Brooke.
Thanks, Lindy. Good morning, everyone. Just had a few brief updates for this group, and I'll start with what I think is the most relevant. Yesterday, Secretary Sean Duffy was in front of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. It was a hearing on Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill and DOT's priorities. I think what's most important were two call outs. One, Senator Schiff specifically called out grant projects in California that have not had agreements signed. The $166 million mega grant was on that list. Secretary Duffy responded and said that they are working through the volume of announcements and that the real work is done in actually getting the agreement signed. And he had said that over the last few years, there's been an unprecedented number of announcements and that they will continue to work through it. He also said in that hearing earlier when Chairwoman Capito had asked the same question related to grants, that there were specifically 3,200 announced projects at DOT without signed grant agreements, some dating back to 2022, and that he's committed to getting agreements signed out the door for spring building season with a nonpartisan view. So I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that for this group today. Also, we are working with Representative DeSaillier's office on the FY26 appropriations process, along with the transportation reauthorization process, as that is starting right now in Congress. And the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee has been reaching out to stakeholders requesting proposals. And just kind of zooming out for this group, Congress is still going through a lot of procedural debate related to budget reconciliation. They're trying to decide on levels of cuts, what to do with the debt limit. Ways and Means and Senate Finance right now are beginning to dig into individual tax provisions of what they want to cut and increase. And then yesterday, I'm sure everyone saw this, but the president was announcing a big proposal related to tariffs, a 10% baseline tariff on all imports globally coming into the US will go into effect on April 5th, and then reciprocal tariffs will go into effect on April 9th. So that's my brief update today for everyone, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Nope, all relatively.
I just note the good news is what Brooke said about getting those documents signed. It really is nonpartisan. 3,200 agreements spanning 3 years of
I
backlog.
heard something about they had to go through an additional step to make sure that they all complied with all of Trump's executive orders. Is that what you heard, Brooke? After, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been the direction as we've seen EOs drop down initially. But to your point, I think, it sounded like pretty positive comments yesterday related to working through these agreements now.
Yeah, and just maybe a few updates on the mega grant. So we got a lot of movement on the mega grant last week. And staff at headquarters as well as the local level reached out to us. And so and I talked to the Federal Highways California administrator at length, and we're expecting potentially some revisions to the template for the mega grant. And that will reflect, I think, some of the executive orders. So I think we're looking forward to seeing that. And I know Stephanie is really, focusing on making sure we stay connected with staff. But it was good to see some movement on it last week and then obviously the positive remarks this week at the EPW committee. So again, I think we're pretty hopeful that, we're going to hopefully get that agreement executed, I wouldn't say soon, but hopefully by summertime.
Just to note, the stock market's down 1,300 so far.
It was 1,400.
Well, it's come back a little bit to 1,300.
It's coming back.
Just saying.
Chair, I would like
Yes.
to know, Colin has his hand raised. He'd like to.
Okay,
if that's-
I'm just going to, Colin from,
Colin Clark.
oh,
Yes.
yep, okay. Yep, from CCTA, that's not public, so that's.
All right, go ahead, Colin.
Hi, good morning. Just wanted to let everyone know at the same time, because I just found out that I received an email from FHWA late last night, but I just received it this morning. It is in regards to the FY 2024 SS4A Planning and Demonstration Grant that we applied for and won a partial grant award that was announced in November of 24. I'll just read it real briefly, just so you're aware. And then I've been, working on a response and will continue coordinating, with staff. But it basically says, this email is to inform you that the FHWA has not yet received your SS4A final report for the multi-jurisdiction corridor planning, speed reduction, and safe system demonstration project. According to the terms of your grant agreement, the final report was due no later than 120 days after the end of the period of performance. I'll stop there. It goes on to refer to Code of Federal Regulations section and stuff like that, but CCTA objectively has no existing agreement with FHWA on this particular grant. So I don't really understand any sort of legal authority to cite an agreement that isn't yet active, but just wanted to flag that for everyone's awareness.
Okay. Sounds like. Yes. Anything else, Lindy?
Thank you, Chair Noack and Commissioners.
Do we have any public comment?
We have not received any public comment.
Great. We don't need any There's no recommendations on this piece, so, okay. We will move on. Next item is an action item presented by Stephanie Hugh, discussing Interstate 680 northbound express lane project. My favorite topic and charts.
I will now
Only
welcome you to come
behind,
with the
yeah, only
presentation.
behind the other one.
Good morning, Chair Noack, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Hu, Director of Projects at the Authority. And since we do have some new commissioners, you will see some repeated slides to those who have been here for a while. So I apologize if it's repeated information for some of us. Here we go. Just quick overview of Innovate 680 is not going to take very long, but it is a program with a holistic approach to addressing congestion on northbound 680 with various strategies. The goal of the program is to really improve safety, connectivity, efficiency, and reliability of the corridor, and also to provide accessible mobility options in order to promote mode shift and then improve air quality for residents along 680. There are 6 key projects. We're going to focus on the express lane completion this morning, but there are other projects like part-time transit lane, mobility hubs, an app that we're working on for mobility as a service, and coordinate adaptive ramp metering under advanced technologies. But again, today we're looking at the express lanes project. The goal of the project is to close or reduce the existing express lane gap on northbound 680. On the southbound side, the express lanes is pretty much complete in the county. On the map, the gray is what's existing express lane, where there is an express lane existing. The colored portion is what's missing, which I will go over in a second. The current status for the project is that we are in environmental clearance. In the Caltrans world, it's called Project Approval and Environmental Document, or PAED phase, and that's the phase that we've been on for a few years now. The purpose of the project is to reduce peak period congestion and travel time on northbound 680, encouraging carpool and transit use, improving travel time, reliability, offering those who are not carpooling a more reliable travel option by using the express lane. The project also addresses the need for congestion relief, express lane continuity on northbound 680, and also addressing some weaving issues at Lawrence and Treat Boulevard area. Over the past few years, we've studied a range of alternatives as part of the environmental clearance phase. We've looked at alternatives that completely close the express lane gap, and that is done by shifting the southbound roadway to the west. We also looked at leaving a gap in the express lane system, which is shown in that pink area. Also, due to the state's new VMT policies, we were asked to study an alternative that construct an express lane by converting an existing lane, and that's the alternative 5 that we added sort of later on in our process. And of course, we always study all of this against no build. And then the preferred alternative was chosen back in September 2024 within the project development team that consists of MTC, Caltrans, and CCTA. So alternative 2 with that star is what is moved forward with as a build alternative as we finalize the final environmental document. So the next slide shows the build alternative that we have selected, which is the alternative 2. The project elements from south to north is to construct a new express lane from Navorna, where the current lane ends right now. In that light blue segment on the south side of the map, Navorna to about south of Ignacio Valley Road will be a new express lane by widening or restriping. There will be a gap in that pink area between south of 24 to about south of North Main. So basically around the 24 interchange, there will be a gap in the express lane system. And then we'll pick up with a new express lane from just south of North Main to 242. So that's that second light blue line. And then from 242 to about Arthur Road, we will convert the existing HOV lane to an express lane. And then the last item is the braided ramps between Lawrence and Treat. Currently, there's a lot of weaving movements from the Lawrence on-ramp and the Treat Boulevard off-ramp. And then also there is a truck scale that just right next to our office here, the whole area is a cause for a bottleneck that often backs up traffic south of 24 in the northbound direction in the evening, as you all probably know. So just to demonstrate, there's a couple pictures to explain what braided ramps are. This is the existing condition. Oh, cursor. Okay, currently the North Main exit is a loop ramp. The Lawrence on-ramp is to the bottom right. That's where we enter the freeway. That's the on-ramp. And then North Treat Boulevard off-ramp is top of the page. And then that's also where the existing truck scale is. So in the build condition, different from the existing situation, if you want to exit on Treat, you will then now use that loop ramp with those who are exiting with North Main. So if you are going to North Main, you would go through the loop ramp like you do today. But those who want to go to Treat will exit with the loop ramp, but continue straight. Those on the Treat Boulevard off-ramp going to Treat Boulevard will be elevated on a bridge that allows the Lawrence Way on-ramp folks to be underneath the bridge, thereby separating those two movements. So the braiding of these two ramps basically alleviate or eliminate that weaving movements that happen today and relieve a lot of congestion that spills back to south of 24. So we selected the alternative back in September, where we've been working on finalizing the final environmental document that is slated to be finished in July. In the meantime, we've talked about MEGA just now. We were awarded $160 million for MEGA for our first phase in October. This will cover everything north of 24. So again, constructing the express lane from 24 to 242, braided ramps at the Lawrence Treat Boulevard area, and then converting the express lane, converting the existing HOV to express from 242 to Arthur Road. So the next steps within the next 12 months or so, we are working on executing that MEGA agreement that we just talked about. Due to the complexity of the project and to also expedite project delivery and also for more cost certainty, we are pursuing progressive design build as our delivery model. Starting around this time, and it's the reason for this amendment that we're going to go over in a moment, to start 30% design concurrent with PAED or environmental clearance completion, really to get us ready for the progressive design build process. So the HDR team is preparing to doing both at the same time as they're tapering off a PAED process, completing it, they will begin the 30 design effort. We'll be completing PAED in July. Between June to October, we will procure a project construction management team to help us get ready for the PDB process. And from end of the year to about spring of 2026, we will procure a progressive design build team and hopefully to complete 30% design by June 2026 and hand it over to the PDB team for completion of the project. There have been two budget amendments for agreement number 520 with HDR. The previous two amendments really was to cover the implication of the SB 743 implementation. The CEQA document was elevated to an EIR to address the VMT impacts. We also added alternative to study that GP conversion that I spoke about earlier as one of the bill alternatives that we didn't choose but still studied. There was additional outreach done because of the EIR and also to explain SB 743 to the public, what is VMT. Also, we've created a couple of videos to support that effort of outreach. So at this time, we are requesting the board to approve amendment number 3, which covers the additional scope of 30% design completion by HDR. To address Commissioner Arnold's question earlier, it is funded by a Federal Service Transportation Program fund, or STP fund, that we already have through that has been actually supporting this whole time, this project the whole time. There is about $4 million left to this funding that actually we must use by June 2026. So this is actually very timely. Also, part of HDR's base contract had included an optional task to move on to PSNE. So that's eligible work. Therefore, we were able to amend their contract to do this additional scope. The budget of additional budget of $4.06 million will include contingency, and also to extend the terms to June 30, 2026 to meet our timeline for the PDB completion or efforts. Staff is seeking authorization for the chair to execute amendment number 3 to agreement 520 with HDR. The budget increase is 4.06 million. That includes a contingency value of $269,498. And in total, the new maximum total agreement value would be 13.84 million to provide that additional engineering service of 30% PSNE. We're also asking through this amendment to extend the agreement terms from June 30, 2025 to June 30, 2026, and also asking to delegate authority to our executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language and also negotiate future amendments within the contingency. And then just to also note that this is a federalized contract and to add this value, subs to do the 30% work, we have to go through the federal process with local assistance to get their review and approval. So all of this is contingent upon completion of that process, which has been started. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that you all may have.
Any questions? Darlene?
I have two questions for you, Stephanie. The first is a question of how is the contingency controlled? How is it set up to be controlled? Is it not actually authorized?
Yeah, so it's not authorized. So mainly we put it aside as a line item on the budget. And when there is a need for it, the HDR team is required to write us a letter, substantiate what it will be used for. If we are asking them to do additional scope that we need that contingency. But it's not authorized at this time.
Okay. My second question is really a factor of me being new. So if you can point me to the past, I would love to take a look at it. But
Sure.
Was there an analysis presented of how you got to choosing progressive design build?
We're not yet. I think we have talked about it in briefly when we were talking about Mega back in December, but we never really have done a deep dive on that method. But we have very good experience with doing construction management, general contractor, CMGC, with a contract down in San Ramon with the pedestrian overcrossing that Ivan led. He's no longer here. But we found that to be a very efficient way of constructing projects and with a lot of more cost certainty with a guaranteed maximum price that we were able to obtain. So for this project, since this is complex and we would like to get more cost certainty in this point, progressive design build is being pursued. And initially we had wanted to do CMGC, but we don't have the authority to do so because this project is within state right of way. So therefore the next best thing we feel closest to CMGC is progressive design build. The San Ramon pedestrian overcrossing that I just spoke about is within city right of way, and we were able to do CMGC, but in this case we are unable because state owns this facility.
I guess I would just like to suggest that I think it deserves some deeper dive look. I don't think progressive design build is just a panacea for making sure that you're controlling costs, and it has its pluses and minuses, and it doesn't have quite as long of a track record. I'm a little concerned about the longer term cost issues. I do think it just, in the course of this development, I think it deserves a little bit more analysis review.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a deep dive into alternative delivery. I think we like Ivan and I and the construction management team did a deep dive into like how we want to deliver this project. And based on what we've heard, I mean, Ivan talked to contractors, we talked to a lot of people, and it's really based on the complexity of the project, the anticipated risk of the project, and then also the cost certainty and the schedule certainty. Progressive design build hasn't been used anywhere yet. So it was just literally legislation that got approved last year. And so the best thing that we have to go off of right now, and this is mainly in transportation, but is essentially design build, and then And so knowing that there's been, design build doesn't have a fantastic track record, right? And so I think everyone is, even Caltrans, and I know even at CCTA, like if we could do CMGC, our preferred alternative delivery method would be CMGC. Now CMGC also has its own nuances because you're now the mediator between the designer, the contractor, and the independent cost estimator. And so with the progressive design build, what industry is saying is it gives you the best of both worlds because you've got the contractor engaged early to help really with the means and methods to be able to hopefully reduce risk and cost on the project to get to that guaranteed maximum price. And then the other component of it is you're not this mediator, like your contract is directly with the contractor. So you're not having to mediate between the designer and the contractor. And so, but we know that, Riverside County Transportation Commission is highly interested in it. They're pursuing progressive design build on I-15 express lanes down in Southern California. We are in conversations, on this project, and talking with Caltrans. Caltrans is also proposing a few progressive design build projects on their own. And so this seems to be, and as Stephanie mentioned, we would love to do CMGC, on this project, but it also has its own risks. But we don't have the authority to do CMGC in the state highway system. And so we have design build authority and now this recent progressive design build authority. So I think the key is what we want to do is, we've done an analysis, we've worked with, Ivan and Zune. I think the next step for us is develop an RFP, bring in a PCM and do further analysis of the alternative delivery method and then really determine the structure, the success, the framework with Caltrans. I mean, we're still working with Caltrans on terms of if they even have the commitment of resources that are needed for the project. Because if we don't have commitment on both sides with Caltrans and CCTA, then it's not going to be successful. And so with Caltrans, I don't think District 4 has not done a progressive design build or a design build for that matter. I mean, the most alternative delivery experience they have is Doyle Drive, and that did not go successful. And so we're trying to really educate even District 4 in terms of the necessary resources to commit on this. Because in any alternative delivery method, you don't want to have any third-party owner delay because it'll just result in change orders. And so if we don't have commitment from both sides on Caltrans, and so there's a lot, to your point, there's a lot of details and still analysis that still needs to be worked out. I don't know if we're like 100% on progressive design build, but I think given the fact that we've got, very limited funds on this project, we don't have a lot of Measure J. We don't have a lot of ARM3. And so on a project of this magnitude, $250 million, if we get a significant claim, and not to say we can't get one on a progressive design build, but in terms of, let's say we do get like a $10 million claim, the resources for that is going to be fairly limited, and obviously we'll build in like 10% contingency and all those things into the contract as we're moving forward. And, Stephanie's done a really good job to make sure we've got all those contingencies in play. But at least this method does give us a little bit more, minimizes some of that risk in terms of cost certainty, to be able to deal with that. And to your point, even progressive design build's not perfect, but it does minimize some of the risk compared to regular design bid build. So.
Can you explain between progressive design build and design build?
Yeah, so design, and maybe we can come back with a full presentation to the committee and to the board about how we're doing this. But the difference between design build and progressive design build. So design build is typically a hard bid. So basically what happens is, you take the project to a certain level percent design, could be 30%, 60%, and then you basically do a hard bid. And so the difference between now progressive design build is basically like a hybrid between CMGC and design build. And so what happens is that you bring in the contractor early, it's not a hard bid, And then what you do is you're having the contractor and the designer at the table, and as they're designing the project, you then, as you get to the basically certain milestones in the design, you start negotiating a guaranteed maximum price, very similar to CMGC. So the idea is that, you know, for example, the Bollinger Canyon pedestrian overcrossing, when we got to 95% design, like we started negotiating a guaranteed maximum price for that project. And it was difficult, quite frankly. I mean, construction costs were going up daily. And so Ivan did a really great job in terms of getting that negotiation, and the benefit is that we got to that guaranteed maximum price. It transfers most of the risk to the contractor. Whereas in bid build, you know, you're sharing a lot of the risk between the owner and the contractor. And so with that particular project, we've gotten 3 change orders, and, you know, and I think all the change orders are like less than $100,000, and most of them were actually owner driven by the city. And so Progressive Design Build, it basically brings in that innovation into the project, like CMGC, where the contractor's involved early on. And then you're like I said, at like 65 or not, maybe more like 90, 95, you're starting to negotiate this guaranteed maximum price. If you cannot reach a guaranteed maximum price, then you put the project out to hard bid. So that's how it works. And similar to CMGC. So if you can't negotiate a guaranteed maximum price, then you put the whole project out to bid, if you can't get that negotiation. So there's a lot of like, there's off ramps, you know, to Progressive Design Build. But I think the real important thing here is, you know, is really getting that contractor involved early, like the Bollinger Canyon, because typically when in a regular bid build, the designer makes very, very big assumptions in terms of the means and methods of how the contractor is going to build the project. And so when you have the contractor there in the early design phases, you're really, you know, hopefully minimizing risk based on maintenance of traffic, you know, as well as on the design itself, and then also on the means and methods. And so you're getting all that innovation up front to hopefully reduce the price of the project and also get that guaranteed maximum price. So hopefully, I know it's a long-winded answer to your question, but that's, yeah.
Yep, Darlene?
Yeah, I completely understand, Tim, and there has been a fair amount of other Bay Area progressive design build experience in other sectors. So I certainly think it behooves you know, like all of these alternative delivery projects, it comes down very much to the details of the terms. But the exit ramps can be extremely expensive. And so I do think it deserves future additional analysis so that the board really understands, you know, the potential, what can happen. And it can be very successful. It's not a bad scenario. It's been extremely successful in aviation in particular and other sectors, but it also has had some real hiccups in other sectors as well. So I think it's important to look at it hard going forward.
Yeah, and just to that point, I think from a timing perspective, I think we don't have, you know, the internal expertise, right? So I think that really the next best step is to, you know, prepare this program construction management RFP with like basically like a limited notice to proceed to help us do some of this evaluation and work with them, and then work with Caltrans. And so I think that's really what we're anticipating is the next step. So we can bring in that team that has done this. Like, I mean, you know this, like, you know, Parsons, H&TB, I mean, those are the 2 like big ones in transportation that do this type of work. And so I think we need to bring in a consultant that's done this type of work, has the experience, can really give us to your point, you know, the lay of the land. And then we can make better decisions, but also, you know, we can't even really sit down with Caltrans yet because we got to make sure that we're educating them on roles and responsibilities. So that there's more to come, but I think once we have a better sense of all those factors, I think we'll be in a better position to kind of present to the board exactly where we're going and how we plan to deliver the project. So.
Ron?
Yeah, so what's the process for choosing the contractor for this progressive design build?
Yeah, so it's actually qualifications based. So the way the process would work is we would do an RFP and hire a program construction manager. And so, and then the next step is that the PCM would develop the RFP for the construction, for the contractor component of it. And then what would happen is that RFP would go out and it would be essentially qualifications based. It wouldn't be, it would not necessarily priced. It's not low bid. It's 100% quality based,
Okay. And then,
qualifications based.
and then you mentioned District 4 hasn't done this before, may not have the capacity to handle this sort of a process. What's kind of the fallback position if they aren't able to handle it?
So I think if we don't go progressive design build, then we just go to traditional delivery. So we would just go to regular design bid build. And so that's one. So we got two paths in terms of what we're considering.
No?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, high level view, our agency's been headed towards this. We've been talking about this for years. And I was just whispering, the low bid process has not worked well in this space. And you know what you get from that. And even as cities, we've found ways to do, even if we go traditional plan and spec, we can do a pre-qualification. And it allows an agency like us that's high performing and a high touch to be successful without the traditional extremely change order adverse organization. And in my world, I've been working with companies like Parson since 1978. And way back then, we started a process like that. So some of the really large scale projects we've done traditional design build. Virtually almost every high-rise building in the United States is always design build. I, as the architect, I design it. I put a package out. There's no construction drawings. And then we receive back. It's just that's a methodology, how to eliminate risk. I had one in San Francisco. I had one change order on the job. Client request. We upgraded sales area, actually, in this. So I think for our agency and the recommendation on our self-evaluation of past projects, how they went, what were the factors that influenced the outcome of the process and cost. Two things we learned was about switching to a more sophisticated planning process through our documentation, which uses a 3D modeling building information system, BIM it's called. And that became our new policy. Cost a little more on the front end. In the long run, it helps reduce cost because you have better information to basis. A lot of the work that we're in, Caltrans does not have the best records of old projects. And we work on like Highway 4, 680 interchange. We're playing Christopher Columbus every day, discover and find as you go. We also are spending more time and money as a lesson outcome of those evaluations on potholing and doing our own independent investigations. Because whether it be design, build, or plan and spec, the only opportunity for changes, particularly on plan and spec, they discover something unknown. That's a pretty common denominator. So we've invested heavily to eliminate those risks. And for example, on our CMG project for City of San Ramon, we spent a lot of time. There were utilities, there's gas lines, there's fiber. The major fiber network in California runs through the Iron Horse Trail, what that was. We did the right amount of investigation and had no unknown issues. So we're leaning that way, industry in certain areas, particularly agencies of our scale, of trying to eliminate it. Things to go, but I happened to be at the meeting with Tim when we were meeting with our local Caltrans director, all in on this. But, you know, they have their own, they're always waiting to see budgets and stuff. You know, they don't build things anymore, but they still have the same number of employees they had 30 years ago. So it's a question getting to agree, and they want us to pay them to do that, which we had to do in the Caldecott Tunnel, even though we designed it. So I think we're headed the right way, and we've had a lot of discussion, and I think as was just brought up, there's opportunity as we keep going that we have to make reasonably informed decisions to reduce the risk in whatever way we can and to get the best outcome.
Yeah, I think Member Armitage is correct. I almost called you Chair Armitage. So Member Armitage is correct. I think that Caltrans is committed. I think we just got to work out the details. mean, that's one thing. I mean, we've talked to the executives at the highest level, you know, with Dina and Dave Ambule, and they're committed. They're excited about the opportunity, and I think everyone is excited about it. And something just occurred to me to your point, Member G, is that I was actually just talking with Ryan and Stephanie literally this week about we need to schedule like a trip down to Southern California. Southern California is probably where the most of the design build projects have occurred. I actually personally worked on design build projects down in Southern California. And so I was actually just explaining to them, like, we need to go meet with RCTC and SBCTA and go meet, like, I know the contractor who built the I-10 lane, like, I know the designer, like we should go to meet with a city and like just go meet with all of the stakeholders that were involved with these projects and just get lessons learned and just get briefings from all these people and, you know, do basically like a, you know, a fact-finding mission and then also meet with District 8, you know, those are all my old stomping grounds. And so meet with District 8, talk with them about, because like Southern California, they've done, I mean, I worked on the 91 design build, and then RCTC did design build for the I-15 91 connector. They also did it for I-15 express lanes. SBCTA did it for the I-15 express lanes. They just finished the design build on I-10. So like they're doing just hard bid design build on all their large highway projects, and they're continuing to move forward in that direction. And I think it's important to learn why. You know, why are they choosing this alternative delivery method to build all their big major highway corridor projects, right? And so I think to your point, we are definitely on a fact-finding mission. And I think to your point also is we will keep the board apprised and about the decision and where we're going and make sure that we're making that decision together.
Any additional?
I would, Stephanie, thank you for answering all my
Yes,
questions.
and-
You did a great job. Sorry that I jumped the
No,
gun.
no, that's okay. No, I also just wanted to add, doing the 30% design is low risk at this point.
Yes.
It informs the, you know, if we do progressive design build, it would just set us up for better informed of what the conditions are for design and construction. But if we choose to do the traditional route, we would be that much further along because we do still need to do 30% design. So I just wanted to add that, maybe I
Thank you.
didn't,
And I'd move the
wasn't
items
clear.
presented.
We have a motion. Do we have I need public comment.
We have not received any virtual or written public comments.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Arnridge,
Aye.
Commissioner Bernal,
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Aye.
Vice Chair Xavier,
Aye.
Chair Noack.
Yes.
My motion passes unanimously.
Okay, the next item is an action item presented by Tim Hale to provide an update on Gomentum Station operations.
One second. All right, good morning, committee members and commissioners. Thank you for all the great support over the years on Gomentum Station. And I think for the new members, this presentation is really kind of getting into the background of Gomentum Station, how the partnership is structured, and also the current state of Gomentum Station and kind of the future of Gomentum Station. And the way I structured this presentation was really to get input from all of you and also input from the board on some very specific key things, as I'll review in the presentation. And also something, what we do have is the board formed several years ago a Gomentum Station ad hoc committee. And that ad hoc committee actually has Chair Noack and Member Arnrich on it. And so as well as Commissioner Federal Glover. Federal Glover now retired. So in this upcoming board meeting in April, we will be seeking a appointment of a new member to the Gomentum Station Ad Hoc Committee to engage in a lot of the work that I'm about to present to you. And then I also want Huge shout out to and thank you to Brian and the finance team and helping me support Gomentum Station and helping monitor and pull together a lot of these numbers. Also, thank you to Ryan, our new Deputy Executive of our projects, in terms of the support he's provided over the last few weeks. And then also Jack Hall, as well as the AMG team. Gomentum Station is really a collaborative team effort to really make all this make this successful. So this is a fairly long presentation, so just kind of bear with me here. And the first part of the presentation is just why Gomentum? Why are we doing this? And this is mainly for our new commissioners. This program was started in 2014, and it was really based on how can we leverage technology to create jobs in Contra Costa County. That was the #1 priority in this whole thing. And obviously the other benefits is that we've been able to have a front row seat to the future. We've been able to understand this technology. We've been able to become a leader in this space. And obviously the other benefits is that this technology can do all the things that are on that list. And so those are kind of the 3 big things of, you know, why we're doing this and why we're doing Gomentum Station. And at Gomentum Station, it's not just about autonomous vehicles. There's a lot of different testing partners at Gomentum Station. There's commercial trucking. There is research and development that is being done, like UC Berkeley and even Caltrans. We also have people out there with like tier 1, tier 2 suppliers like LiDAR and camera companies. Even now today, we've got AI companies that are testing at Gomentum Station. And so it's a diverse ecosystem of partners and technologies at Gomentum Station. As I think a lot of you are aware, Gomentum Station has really elevated the CCTA brand, both locally, statewide, nationally, and internationally. Gomentum Station is one of the main reasons I think that we're very well known internationally and the great work we're doing. All of the dots that you see up there are MOUs that we have signed with other countries that and this is not for social media purposes only. These are active MOUs. For example, you know, we've been partnering with Delft in the province and city of Netherlands, or sorry, city of Amsterdam, Delft University on a research project around shared space and autonomous vehicles. We're currently collaborating with Hochbahn in Germany on some of their new business model approaches on transit. We've been working closely with Japan on some of their first and last mile shuttle deployments and kind of learning together on that. Similarly in Australia. So these are active MOUs. Canada, we just signed an MOU with Ottawa to be able to start collaborating in terms of using their testing facility and our testing facility. So this is not just for glamour. This is active partnerships and collaboration around this space. So with Gomentum Station, you know, as I mentioned, we've become a leader. We were the first organization or agency in the state of California to test, you know, level 4 shared autonomous vehicles on public roads. We've been able to launch our Presto program and our autonomous vehicle demonstration projects. And these are 100% grant funded and in-kind funded, very minimal Measure J funds on these projects from Innovate 680. And I think what these pilot demonstration projects has given us a glimpse in terms of what the business models look like and how we can leverage these demonstrations to focus on kind of planning of more broader countywide scale deployment. And then we also leverage Gomentum Station on a lot of our projects, specifically Innovate 680. You know, we're doing bus on shoulder, and we are using Gomentum Station to facilitate bus on shoulder testing and training, as well as we're using our Signal Lab to be able to test new technologies for the Signal projects, and then obviously the Glideways project. The key thing to understand is Gomentum Station is a program of CCTA. It's also a physical location. And so that program can exist throughout the entire organization. It can exist pretty much anywhere in Contra Costa County. And so you've heard me talk about expansion, and so I'll talk about that a little later, but We can, right now, the current test bed that we use today is at the Concord Naval Weapons Station. And then we are definitely exploring other opportunities for other test beds and sites in Contra Costa County based on the demand. And then the program is multiple things. So it's definitely the test bed itself, but it's also there to help support testing and research. And so, for example, I was talking to the California DMV about the great work that we're doing, using and leveraging with the automated driving system grants and the data that we're getting directly. And so we're able to do research and program evaluation. We're able to deploy projects. And we're able to leverage, partner collaboration. So for example, we had the Secretary of Transportation out at Gomentum Station. We're already striving to get Secretary Duffy at Gomentum Station. And when you go to DC on the Hill, like it is a very prominent brand of CCTA and Gomentum Station, and everyone really kind of pays attention to what we're saying and our leadership in this space. So the way the framework works, it all starts with the Navy. As Jack will joke, there's no AV without the Navy. And so Navy is the primary partner. They're the primary owner of the Concord Naval Weapons Station. And so that results into the access to the test bed. City of Concord and the Navy have an AV master license that gives access to the City of Concord for testing the autonomous vehicles at the Concord Naval Weapons Station. And then to be able to get CCTA access to the Naval Weapons Station, we have a sub-license of that license that gives us access to the facility. We have an MOU with the City of Concord, which we're in the process of renewing right now. It's a 5-year MOU. And so we're renewing that and taking that to the City of Concord in April, and most likely we'll be bringing that forward to the Authority Board in May. And then we have a professional services agreement with Next Generation Mobility to provide the day-to-day operations. So in terms of, as you all aware, there's been a long history around Gomentum in terms of managing partners. AAA was our second managing partner in this program. They ceased operations in October of 2023. We went through undergo a transition period where CCTA supported that transition with a $1 million loan to Next Generation Mobility. On March 20th, we approved the professional services agreement with NextGen. And then on the same board meeting, we actually approved the asset purchase agreement with AAA. And then on April 1st, and that's a really key date for everyone to remember, April 1st was the anniversary date in terms of our official start of taking over Gomentum Station and managing Gomentum Station as CCTA in partnership with NextGen. And so that's key in terms of some of the milestones within the professional services agreement. So in terms of all of the agreements that are necessary to make this partnership happen, CCTA has an agreement with U.S. Navy sublicense. We have the professional services agreement with NextGen. We also have the MOU with the city. We're also striving to get an MOU with the county. That's not executed yet. And then with the City of Concord, there's the MOU and the AV master license. And then with NextGen, what's key to them is they're the ones that are managing the private sector relationships and the agreements. So they have the commercial agreements, as well as they carry the insurance for the program, as well as the professional service agreement with CCTA. So all the key agreements were basically successfully executed and agreed upon before April 1st of last year. And the Navy AV license, the master license, is actually renewed every single year. It's an annual renewal. And so this program is subject to renewal every single year with the Navy and every single with the City of Concord. Although again, we have this kind of 5-year commitment with the City of Concord with the MOU, but anything can happen. This Navy tomorrow could come out and say, you're out of there, and we basically have 30 days to get out. And so we don't anticipate that happening anytime soon. But I can get into more details in terms of kind of like the development and coordination with Brookfield. This is how we use the facility today. We have 10 testing zones within the site. We have Bunker City, which is the bottom left, or not bottom left, but bottom of blue. And then you also have the yellow area, which is the G Street complex area. And then on the north part, north of Highway 4 is the downtown area. And all that is, now the key to this is that as we think about development with Brookfield in the future, Brookfield is primarily focused on phase 1, which is primarily going to conflict with G Street. So basically that kind of left middle corner next to the BART station, that is where phase 1 of the development's going to occur, which would only conflict with the G Street complex. And we would then, even if the development were to occur, we do have commitments with soft commitments with Brookfield and the city of Concord to continue testing in Bunker City, and even with the county in the downtown area, even after development occurs. So we do see Gomentum Station being there and being a naval weapon station for the next 30 years. There's no anticipated I'll say end date to the program relative to the overall expansion and development of the development. So in the AV master license, it's really key. This is the master kind of Bible document that we all operate under, but it dictates all of these things, the parameters and specifications in which we need to operate the program. The big thing that really impacted us last year, including our revenue, was that they did limit and put strict restrictions on some of the existing testing areas, particularly Kinney Boulevard. We did lose a partner because we were not allowed to test on Kinney Boulevard, which impacted some of the anticipated revenue. We also lost the ability to develop on the railroad classification yard, which was going to be a potential vehicle dynamic area. We also lost access to the tunnels, and so as well as the shop streets, which is up by the tunnel areas. So this really impacted our potential revenue. So as we transition from AAA to next gen, we were anticipating some impacts to the overall potential revenue. And good news is that we have recovered and we're stable, and I'll go through that here as part of the presentation. The other important thing to understand is special requests. So like if we get a media request, we have to give 45-day advance notice, and the Navy has to approve that. They're not big fans of that. They have to approve all the pictures out there. They don't allow pictures out there. There's a lot of number of requests that we have to comply in terms of the master license. So relative to the professional service agreement with Next Generation Mobility, it's a 5-year agreement between CCTA and NextGen. The key aspect of this is that CCTA owns the programs, we own the trademark, we own all the assets. And that was really, the assets part was really important in terms of the transfer with AAA. So that way, if we ever did have to transfer to a new, different managing partner, we wouldn't have to pay for those assets again. So that was a big lessons learned in the AAA agreement. And then also we dictated, priority access to CCTA, NextGen's responsible day to day. We also have a number of required documents and commitments, I'll go over in a minute. And also we added liquidated damages for any breach of contract. So in terms of roles and responsibilities, essentially CCTA handles the public sector side, NextGen handles the private sector side, but we primarily oversee the program. We as the program owner, and then we handle all of the public agency partners, including any approvals and permits. And if there is any design and construction at Gomentum Station, we oversee that as well. And then we also oversee, state and federal grants. And we also, important is we now own kind of the marketing. So we're responsible for the Gomentum Station website because it is CCTA's program. And then Next Generation Mobility is really responsible for the day-to-day, the facilitation, the planning, the coordination, the master planning, the design, engineering, all of the things that will make the facility actually operate and also and expand. So there are basically 6 major requirements in the professional service agreement, and Next Generation Mobility has satisfied all those requirements in the agreement. There are still some documents that are under review, but they did submit the documents to CCTA for review within the specified deadlines. But the operational safety plan had to be completed within 30 days, a really critical document to understand all the protocols and operations and procedures out there, SOPs. The 5-year strategic plan was submitted a few weeks ago, and so that's under review. The master area plan was also submitted with the strategic plan, so that's under review. The annual budget was also submitted early on, I think about 3 months ago, and I know that's also under review, and I do plan to review that with the Gomentum Station Ad Hoc Committee. The program inventory has been constantly updated. It's available upon request. And then the financial reporting, the quarterly financial reporting, which I'll show you exactly what happened with the quarterly financial reporting over the last performance period. In terms of the financial reporting, they're required to give us quarterly reporting, and this is really making sure that we have, revenue, expenses, and a successful program. That's really the key here is understanding how CCTA can support the program and support NextGen. They also can request appropriations of funds, which they have. And so I'll talk about that in a minute, but we did loan NextGen $1 million out of the fund exchange reserve, and I have details on that later in the presentation. CCTA can request for reimbursement, and there's also a revenue sharing component, which is a minimum of $500,000 or 10% in gross revenue. And then I also talked about the LDs, and the LDs are basically $2,500 a day. So it comes to some of the accomplishments that's happened over the last year. I'm not going to go through all of these, but from an infrastructure standpoint, AAA, there was definitely some infrastructure that had to be improved and after AAA left, in terms of probably the single biggest request was connectivity and mobile and internet across and also power. Those were the two that were probably the most important that had to be fixed based on taking over operations from AAA. Operations, Next Generation Mobility has hired and trained 3 full-time members. And they also have implemented all the necessary procedures to operate the facility. And then, as I mentioned, on the legal side, they've executed all the agreements. And so we find that, the relationship with NextGen has been very good, very positive, been a great partnership, and they've been really getting this program stabilized because that's exactly what we were doing. We basically went, and I'll explain this in a minute, but we went kind of down, and now we're kind of on the swing up in terms of revenue. In terms of utilization, we're averaging right around 65% utilization overall. I know it shows kind of utilization declining, but I will say that December, January, February, March, even under operations with AAA, was the lowest utilizations, typically because of rain. We're not allowed to test out there during rainy days. And typically we see this kind of dip in utilization during this time. But we do anticipate, it coming back up, during the spring and summer and fall. And so this is something that we've seen over time with the utilization and also with AAA in the past. So getting into quarterly reports. So, quarter 1 was basically March 30th of last year. NextGen is on a calendar fiscal year. So I'll get in that in a minute. So they're on a calendar fiscal year, which kind of gets confusing because CCTA is, July 1 to June 30. And so we have to align those a little bit. But quarter 1 was, obviously very limited expenses because we haven't really taken over. And then quarter 2, basically we kind of formed the board, hired the staff, started developing kind of the budget and breakdown. And then we signed all the executed agreements. And I've already explained kind of the Navy restrictions. And so we basically had about $356,000 in revenue, about $1 million in expenses. And there, as you can imagine, with a program like this, there's a lot of upfront expenses. And then basically there's going to be a lot of, hopefully this upcoming fiscal year, that we'll be able to have a better certainty and projection of what expenses are needed over time. So in quarter 3, we've got basically 1.1 million in revenue and about 1.1 in expenses. So basically in quarter 3, we were able to get to net profitability in quarter 3 for that specific quarter. And then also we were able to, NextGen was actually able to start paying back on their interest and loans of the FIR. So we did get a payment in that 3rd quarter. And then we also started looking at opportunities to kind of maximize utilization and get a sense of operations and how we can maximize utilization in terms of schedule and working with some of the key tier 1 partners. Q4, so as you can see here, like we're starting to kind of see expenses kind of go down a little bit, and starting to get a better sense of what it takes to operate the system. You know, we had a lot of one-time upfront expenses. And so basically we were able to realize a net revenue in terms of Q4. They did also pay another payment of their interest and loans. And then they also initiated a new pricing structure that's going to help the revenue structure over time. So instead of having a kind of full day pricing structure, we went to a half day pricing structure. So overall, and this is again, end of calendar year, December of 2024, they were basically, you know, at a negative net in terms of 483,000. And then basically in Q1 5, they were able to bring that back to basically a full net positive for the anniversary date of April 1. And so the requirement in the agreement is the $500,000 or 10% revenue is due at the anniversary of the agreement, which is April 1. And so this financial report reflects them being able to pay $125,000 payment to CCTA. So they were not able to fulfill their full $500,000 obligation. And that is something that I plan to bring to the Gomentum Station Ad Hoc Committee and decide, you know, what options or what direction we want to take in terms of addressing the shortfall of that payment. I'll show in a future slide that NextGen is fully committed to making up the payment in this upcoming fiscal year. And then we also, this quarter, we gained 2 new partners. And I think something that was also, we lost a tier 1 partner. So I think if you're familiar, if you follow the news, Cruise, GM decided not to fund Cruise, and Cruise actually went out of business. And so we lost a tier 1 partner. And so that is an impact to our revenue. However, with the new pricing structure and with our other 2 tier 1 partners, we were able to actually make up revenue. So we do have 1 partner that basically sucks up any available capacity when they can. I mean, and so we do see, you know, revenue kind of maintaining, even though you've got this potential loss in partner. And then in terms of the annual budget, so this is the annual budget that they submitted this year for 2025. And so you can kind of see what the kind of the summary there in 2024. And so based on the new revenue structure, based on new partners, based on the operating expenses, they are projecting $313,000 in net profit. I will say that's a very conservative number. By, you know, I have personally kind of looked in these numbers, and I know in finance has, but there's a lot of contingencies that are built into those numbers. For example, I know there's 10% contingency kind of built across the whole line here. So there is opportunity and potential for some additional revenue payments in the following fiscal year. So in terms of the FIR loan, this gives you an idea where we're at. So we advanced them $1 million, and we do accrue interest at the LAIF rate. It's a 7-year repayment schedule. And you can see that they've made 2 interests. They made the interest payments as well as the loan payments, approximately about $157,000. And then so right now they currently owe CCTA $877,000. They did make another interest payment actually this week that I've not accounted for in this. So they are following through with their commitments on making these quarterly payments to CCTA on the interest and loan on the FIR. And then this is the component that I wanted to kind of go over. And so you can see at the top is the CCTA fiscal year, and then you have the calendar fiscal year, and then you have the anniversary date. So it's very confusing. So what NextGen has committed to be doing is actually moving forward with basically $125K quarterly payment to CCTA based on revenue received. And so as you can kind of see that where that gray $500K bar ends, you see that $125K payment. And then moving forward, you know, they're showing that committed $500K payment. And then based on that additional revenue, the 313K would come back to CCTA. And so we're just, so that's why it's really important to kind of focus on this anniversary date of April 1. And then in terms of cash flow, a lot of this is going to be hitting, one fiscal year, another fiscal year, et cetera, based on cash flow. And this summarizes, so we've talked a lot about this, I think, last month, but, so CCTA keeps track of all of its revenues and expenses of the program in what we call the Gomentum account. This was described in the mid-year budget last month. And so this gives you an idea of kind of where we're at and where we're heading. So management of the facility this year was about $356,000. The Innovation Alliance, which is kind of a one-time relative to developing that gaps and needs analysis. And then the expansion piece is also one time in terms of $349,000. And then based on the revenue, $125,000, that leaves a carryover of $920,000. And so as we look to this upcoming fiscal year in FY26, we're projecting again $350K in management, which is, and a big part of that is actually staff time. So about $250,000 of that is going to be staff time. And then the ongoing kind of facilitation of the Innovation Alliance, $150K, which doesn't allow any room for actual program development. So if we decide to do any program development, that's something we can talk with Next Generation Mobility or pursue a grant. And we're also not showing any projected costs relative to expansion. And if we do any expansion work, we will be discussing that with Next Generation Mobility. And so with that being said, we're projecting for FY26, $500,000 in expenses. And then based on that, with the additional payment of $313,000, that'll reduce that. And so I mentioned this last month, but in the strategic plan, this is where the strategic plan is going to be really key to like outline what those additional payments are going to be, over a 5-year period. And I think, based on our projections that we hope to, make CCTA whole in the next like 3 to 4 years within that strategic plan. So, and then just kind of moving on. So what we are seeing is basically more demand, in the program. This is a map of all of the kind of companies in this space in Silicon Valley. And so there is a very high demand for a full service facility. And this is our vision for what we call Gomentum 2.0, which is really to create a world-class full service facility. We do believe that by building this facility, and we've done economic analysis around this, that this full service facility would generate about $158 million in annual economic output for Contra Costa County. And I think a big part of this is to support some of the workforce development initiatives, as well as, continue to leverage it for research and development, including making it a state asset as a regional asset, et cetera. And then, so what does a full service facility look like? So this is a facility in China that's owned and operated by IDIADA. And you can see here, this is what, high-speed loop, the big paved area in the bottom right there is the vehicle dynamic area. On the left is what we call markability, where you market different surfaces to the vehicle in terms of ice and bumps and et cetera. And so that entire facility is what we're striving, to build in certain locations and expanding beyond the Concord Naval Weapons Station in City of Concord in Contra Costa County. So the purpose of the facility like that is to support what's called homologation. And homologation is the ability to certify a vehicle to a set of requirements. And so you have passive and active safety requirements that are dictated by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. You also have noise, vibration, and harshness. You have reliability, durability. And all our current regulatory framework is that the federal government kind of oversees the certification and safety standards of the vehicle. And then the driver is really permitted at the state level. And so the Federal Vehicle Motor Safety Standards kind of dictate all of this with NHTSA and if it's a commercial vehicle, it's the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Carrier Association. So all of this is what's done under self-certification within the current regulatory environment. And yeah, I think what we're seeing in the future, and particularly with this administration, is there might be some interest in moving into more of a hybrid of validation and self-certification, given some of the new technologies. So some of the locations that we're looking at across Contra Costa County is the former U.S. Steel site in Pittsburgh. And those discussions with U.S. Steel are ongoing, particularly because they are waiting to see what happens with Nippon. As you may have read the headlines, Nippon was slated to purchase U.S. Steel, and now with the Trump administration or the administration changing the administration, they're now looking at investment and so what U.S. Steel is waiting to see what's going to happen. I will say that we have first right of refusal on this property. That is as a verbal commitment that I have from U.S. Steel. They are fully supportive of our partnership as well as the P3 opportunity that exists here. The other facility that has popped up recently is Richmond Field Station with UC Berkeley. And so UC Berkeley has approached CCTA to be a significant partner in this with Gomentum Station. And we do see this as how we can leverage this facility to expand Gomentum Station testing to Richmond Field Station. Berkeley's very excited. Their partners are very excited. And so they would be there. What we're planning on building there is basically an ADAS or facility similar to like intersections and roadways, but also a vehicle dynamic area. And for our partners, the number one thing that they're looking for is a vehicle dynamic area. And that gives them the ability to accelerate and be able to maneuver within a large paved area. And so we're looking for, and the beauty about this relationship is that Berkeley is very, very committed and partner with us on the Gomentum Innovation Alliance. And so what we can do is leverage any potential revenue that would be generated by Richmond Field Station to support the workforce development and really kind of take the burden off of the Concord Naval Weapons Station revenue. Yeah. And then I think that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions? No?
Maybe a little comment to it, high level view. We all know it, but people sitting here probably don't. The reason we went to a contract model of somebody running the station, public information, that we actually ran this ourselves. Somebody made a public records request to an entity that you all know. And they were able to get their confidential information by a competitor. So it's really important, and there's one other national testing facility, although it's not for autonomous vehicles. We modeled how we set this up, how they do that. And no different than if any contract we do, you have the ability to request information out of for transparency. So by having a third party do that, and they hold the contracts with them so that there is distance for confidentiality, risk and all of that. The other reason that wasn't clear, why did we have AAA? We had AAA as a partner because they are an automotive insurance company. And at the time, autonomous vehicles, how do you put an autonomous vehicle on a street, public street? You have to have insurance. And so as a partner, they came along to be able to look under the hood and figure it out. And we made a transfer at the time and let them run it. They gave us the autonomy that we needed and things like that. Well, they discovered all that they needed to do. And that's why you can see autonomous vehicles on the street, because they can get insurance now. But secondly, their organization, they are just an insurance company, and their parent company said, you're only supposed to be in insurance. Thank you for finding out the information, but they did not want them running that. And we had the opportunity to step back in and reorganize how that was so that we wholly own it. But we then, just like all of our design contracts and things, we hire a third party. We have a cancellation clause. We have a certain duration for the contract under these rates. And because of the fact that we had to restart it on our own, we came up with a model of how to loan some money and get a payback so that CCTA does not fund this out of Measure J. So that's the reason for the really detailed analysis. And we had asked previously to get detailed analysis where we are, and appreciate these updates and where we're in.
Just to clarify, we can't fund it out of Measure J. It's not that we don't, we can't fund it out of Measure J. So, yeah. On the budget, the labor costs for 2025 go up dramatically versus the 9 months. Can you? 300 and some thousand to 2.1.
Yeah, so a big part of that is it's that's a 9 month versus a 12 month. I mean, that's what number one. And then I think the other thing is that I can walk through what's in here, but there's our, the 3 employee salaries, the benefits. There's also essentially a legal consultant, and then also the tax services. And then in terms of the consultant services, there's about $70,000 per month that's projected for consultant services. And then there's also several contingencies built into this. So there's $360,000 in terms of kind of, uncommitted or unidentified services. And that could be consultants or even potential employees. And then there's also a 10% contingency. So on the total $2.1 million, there's roughly about $550,000 of contingency kind of built into this.
And I'm assuming that the 9-month 327 didn't include 3 FTEs for the entire time.
That's correct.
The other thing that the Navy taking away Kenny Boulevard and so on, is that now their limitations are now set, or can they change every year? Can they change that again next year and the year after?
It's all, I mean, it can be negotiated. I don't know if we'll be successful, quite
Yeah.
frankly, but it is something I know that Kevin Romick is the executive director of Next Generation Mobility. He's sitting in the audience, and I know he's in active conversations with the city of Concord about, the upcoming renewal of the AV license, which will happen in August of this year.
Okay.
So we are, I mean, one of the things that I think we're trying to do is kind of with the kind of new ownership, new procedures, new management, we're trying to basically, kind of prove ourselves, if you will, to the Navy and to the Concord. And so I think we're trying to build a lot of goodwill in this first year. And then hopefully that goodwill will lead into some of these more hopefully positive negotiations with the Navy.
And based on Brookfield's timeline, when is the Navy likely to turn over the property to Brookfield? Because I
So
hear 5 years before when they shovel in.
it's a moving target right now because of the federal administration. I was actually talking to Commissioner Obringer yesterday about it, and because of the lack of potential staff and changes in staff, it doesn't seem like this is the group. So this is the last facility in California that's going through the BRAC process. And so there's a small group in San Diego that is designated to do that. It's a handful of people. And so if those, and so there was already turnover within that group based on the administration, change in the administration. And so Commissioner Obringer was telling me that it's really a moving target at this point in terms of when they're going to be able to successfully transfer the property.
Other questions, Darlene?
In regards to the Navy, Tim, I'm just curious, is that within their purview every year, or is that a congressional approval every year?
So it's within their purview, and we do have the ability to make it congressional if we really want to. But we have discussed that internally, but we don't want to upset the apple cart with the city, but it is in the Navy's purview to do that license every year.
The other question I have, and I'm sure this is, again, a learning curve for me over time, but in the longer range strategic plan, I'm just curious as to, are there thoughts and projections of what the financial upside is and what that would potentially lead to? And again, I'm sure that's homework on my part to study the strategic plan a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So, I mean, getting back to some of this stuff, the expansion work. So there's been about $350,000 spent on expansion work. And that work I mean, I have a whole deck on Gomentum 2.0 that I could probably dive more deeper into if you want, and I can add those slides for the board meeting if you like. I think, but we wanted to understand, what is really the upside, right? And the financial position of this whole thing. And so given the market demand, and we've confirmed that market demand with Idiata, as well as another company called Transportation Research Center in Ohio, they know there's a tremendous amount of market demand in Silicon Valley for this. And based on that market demand, we do see a lot of upside in terms of, expanding and building a facility. I think the thing that's killing Gomentum Station right now, and I would not say kill, but it's limiting Gomentum Station, is just all of these restrictions, at the Concord Naval Weapons Station. We can't widen roads, we can't build anything. And so we're kind of at a point where we just have to go and look for other locations. I mean, it'd be great. We could go build this thing in Solano County if we want to, right? But it's not in Contra Costa County. So I think that the idea is to kind of keep this thing in Contra Costa County. And I think we have, as I mentioned, we've got two really great opportunities in terms of expansion, but based on that expansion and based on, it's really the types of facilities that we build. So like, if we can't realize, the full proving ground concept, then we can do like a phased approach, and have different facilities throughout. But generally just about if we build the full facility, there's anywhere from like potentially of like anywhere from 5 to 15 million in like net revenue potential over in terms of the business plan. And then I think, and I already mentioned the other part of the upside, which is if we build a facility that's a proving ground, you're talking roughly about 850 jobs. You're talking about $158 million in annual economic output, because we hired Ernst & Young to do that study. And so, and they looked at all of this. And so we believe that if we can build something like this, like at US Steel, it's going to be a catalyst for East County and the Northern Waterfront, in terms of like bringing that whole industry to Contra Costa County. So, because if you build the proving ground in these facilities, ideally what's happening is that you got companies like GM, and not GM because they'll probably stay in Michigan, but people like Toyota and Tesla and Zoox and Waymo all bringing their facilities to Contra Costa County, close to the proving ground. And that's what we've seen with other facilities like this, like the one in Ohio, the Transportation Research Center. That one, they did an economic study about 2 years ago, and they're realizing roughly about $176,000 in terms of annual economic output based on the study that Ohio University did. So I think, so that's kind of the upside. The upside for us, I think, is really the jobs factor. And I'm sorry, 176 million. Sorry, 176 million. Thank you, Newell. So 176 million. So I think the upside for us is really that economic development component, which is really from the very beginning what we strive to do, was to create jobs and economic development for Contra Costa County.
Yep, Ron?
Yeah, to that point, a lot of the emphasis I know right now is financial, just because we want to show that it can pay for itself and all of that. But it'd be nice to see the economic development, job creation side of it projected as well. And just because that's the exciting part in the original vision of the
There's a
program.
whole big presentation on that.
I can, what I'll do, because we have a lot of new board, that's a good comment. I mean, this is really why I'm here. I want to get input from you and what you think will be important for the board meeting. I can add, so I'll add a few of those slides into the presentation for the board meeting and just do a little better review of kind of the Gomentum 2.0 vision.
I think it would be helpful if you actually sent
Sent it.
those earlier
Yeah,
presentations to all the new
presentation.
members,
yeah,
both of them, the Gomentum 2.0 and the economic, so that they have that chance to really review those before the meeting, because
will do.
otherwise a couple of us will fall asleep in the board meeting.
So,
One other
Yeah,
question.
go ahead, Ron.
And how is labor being engaged in this whole process right now?
So a good question. So, I mean, labor is really focused on, the upskill and reskill. So we've been able to leverage Gomentum Station to facilitate tours and educational opportunities for labor. So last year we hosted ATU at Gomentum Station, I think 3 times. And basically the first time was a lot of their local representatives, and that garnered a lot of interest. And then they brought out their, you know, their state and international representation. And then that same state and international representation came out a third time. And so we've been able to leverage the facility to be able to educate them and really bring labor into the conversation as a partner using Gomentum Station. And I think that's really key. I mean, not a lot of people have a facility like this to be able to do that education, right? And so, and then I think the other component is, and you heard it last month, but it's also the Gomentum, you know, Innovation Alliance and kind of the workforce development work that Lindy is leading. And so, but I think that's the extent that that labor's involved. And then I think, well, no, I'll add a third one. And we use Gomentum Station for the main mobility project. We use Gomentum Station to actually do training, you know, at the facility. So I think that's also the third important component. And we do encourage others, even, you know, County Connection, bus operators, MTs, everyone. Even Caltrans, we're like, you've got a secured facility with roadways, feel free to use it for training. You know, the sheriff uses it for training, CHP uses it for training. So it's a great place to train people. You know, like I think even for Bus on Shoulder, we do plan to use Gomentum Station as, you know, for bus on shoulder training in the future to train bus drivers to, you know, we'll set up like a lane at Gomentum Station and be able to train them on how to do that. So I think training is also a big component for labor as well.
All right. So one more question. And then with, you know, it's just super exciting, the technology, the possibilities, you know, the Navy's already showing that they can put roadblocks in the way by limiting access. Are there any other major things besides obviously uncertainty at the federal level and the economy? Any other major things you see that are challenges to this success of this program?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's the partners are number one, because they're the ones who generate revenue. And so I think, you know, a really key part for us in this, I think now that we've got the program somewhat stabilized, you know, with this first year of operations, I know for the second year, there's going to be a pretty significant kind of marketing and business development, you know, effort this year to reach out to the automotive industry and attract more partners, you know, to Gomentum Station. Because, and I think that's one big factor is just, you know, this is really dependent on startups and automotive industry and all of those things. And obviously with all these tariffs, that God knows where that's going to happen. So, and then I think the other big challenge is obviously, you know, the Navy. And then the other challenge that we'll have to really navigate through is when it does happen is the transition to Brookfield. Because right now we're using the facility for free, and there's a really good chance that Brookfield's gonna be like, yeah, we want a lease payment on this land that you're using as part of the facility, which is gonna be an potential additional cost. So I think those are some things that we'll have to navigate in the future. But I think in terms of like current risks today, you know, I think the only thing that could impact us is the Navy coming in and saying, we need to do mitigation. So we're going to shut down Bunker City for like 2 months and to go do some environmental mitigation. That could happen, you know, so it's really just the Navy is really the big wild card. So.
Yeah, just a comment to the group. You know, I know it's important to get the $1 million repaid and all of that, but also the marketing is also going to be really important for the success. And so it might require further investment in this program. And so I just hope we're open to the fact that, you know, it's like a startup and we need to be able to, when necessary, invest money in it.
I think that, you know, the question will be, you know, risk versus, you know, payback. And where the money comes from, because the reserve is down fairly low at this point. And so, you know, we have to be careful because we can't use Measure J funds for this. So it's going to be a bit of a balancing act, right?
Absolutely. It's a risk reward situation. It's a risk reward situation,
reward.
but I appreciate the comment.
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, we've been doing it for 11 years under different ways. So this is a model that gives us the greatest amount of control. We made investments before, got those back. I think what we hear today, and the evidence is there based on current revenues, that the model's working. That's really the bottom line. It's working and it still has potential. but we always want to be transparent. Here's risks. We've had a risk for 11 years. So I think it's generally speaking, really good news. We got to figure out how to do this. We've been here 2 hours. So we've spent more than half the time today. This presentation actually needs to be cut for the board in some way. So make sure, as our chair said, let's make sure all the new members get the complete presentation, which was on the workforce development. It's really great, a great thing. And some of the
Expansion.
yeah, give the expansion and stuff, because otherwise, here we are we just spent $4 million, by the way, and spent 10 minutes making the decision. This is $1 million. We've gotten $127,000 of that money back. We see the future of this. Let's keep it proportional, because we're going to lose members on this. I'm sorry, this is a long presentation for something that is a small risk, because by the way, we have a cancellation cost. If it doesn't work, we just cancel the contract. We're done. Stop it, right? But this is an update, but we have a tendency to dwell on little things because we don't dwell on the big things. This is a little tiny contract. We have a really good group doing it. They prove themselves. And the fact is the demand is there. We can't meet all the demand. And that's why we're looking at alternative sites. By the way, that's $75 million a year of revenue, right? And there's a cost to run that. So there's opportunities for us to still have. Why are we doing it? Simply to have that window to the world, help our county economically. Why not? These are taxpayer dollars, taxpayer organizations. We have a lot of reasons to do it. And selfishly, let's keep this in Contra Costa County. So.
Okay, any public comments?
We have not received any written or verbal public comments.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
We don't need a vote on this one. All right, next item is correspondence and communications. We have no correspondence in the packet. We're now moving to commissioner and staff comments. Commissioner comments? I will try to keep people updated on SB 63 as it sort of moves forward. As I indicated before, MTC had a support with amendments. This primarily had to do, there is a section in SB 63 called TFRIP that is meant to look at all the shortfalls and allocate amounts between counties. And there's quite a lot of contention over that TFRIP for a number of reasons. One, Caltrain is actually a JPA with San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara, run by Samtrans. There's some governance questions, so the numbers are up in the air, and those three have to agree on that. It can't be part of the TFRIP, or it can be, but it can only just sort of be used as information. Because the SB 63 came out as a 3-county measure with opt-ins by 2 other counties, the TFRIP numbers will only be used for those counties that are in the measure, and then how the other counties contribute toward their piece of Caltrain or BART will be a big question going forward. So lots of discussions still going on. There are still discussions going on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, and I think that's it for right now. Well, I mean, there are a couple others, but that's the primary. Yeah, well, I'm trying to keep it simple in my brain, so best I can do. Anybody else? All right, we'll go to, Tim, you have any comments?
Yeah, just one. I want to introduce you to our new Deputy Executive of Project Operations. Ryan
Stole them
McLean.
from us, stole them from us.
He comes from the city of Pleasant Hill as their transportation manager, and then prior to that, he had really extensive experience at Fair and Peers and in the consulting industry as well as program management. And so he's had a lot of diverse experience in terms of working on P3s and also operations maintenance agreements and working with cities and also building national practices for Fair and Peers, and so that really a testament to his leadership abilities. And so excited to have Ryan here and we'll do a full kind of introduction, I think, at the board meeting. So welcome, Ryan.
He stays really calm. Stays really calm despite a lot of, we had to do a bike ped plan in Pleasant Hill that was very contentious here and there. And Ryan was able to get us through that without anybody getting killed or beat up, which was tremendous. So I'm sad we lost him in Pleasant Hill, but at least he went somewhere else where I was. So I'm very happy to see him. That's it? Okay, well, then I will adjourn this meeting at 10:30.